Welcome back to Up the Villa podcast, joined by Justin. How are you doing?
Very good, mate. Fresh from London at the weekend and getting them 3 points.
Yeah, your pockets are full of 3 points. Back to B6 with a smile on your face. Absolutely love it. So we're going to go through the predicted lineup. What we're going to predict, we don't even know. We're just going to go off the cuff with it. We'll just see what happens. And then, we'll have a look at what we can expect from Legia Warsaw as well. But some Villa news that we haven't spoke about yet is Aston Villa's acquisition partnership with Rail Union, which is a club owned by the Unai Emery family. And I've got a quote from Nassef here. And I think this sort of, to me, gives me so much excitement and confidence for the growth of what we're about to embark on. And this is the quote, and I think it's brilliant. So he said, the expansion of our relationship with the Emery family. I mean, if that doesn't say tied down, like, you're here to stay, then I think it's absolutely amazing. So if we just sort of go to the statement from Villa. So V Sports and Aston Villa are delighted to announce a new collaborative partnership with the Spanish club Real Union. The Basque club-based club currently plays in the Premier Federation. Is that what it says? I don't know. The third tier of Spanish football. One of the founding members of La Liga, Real Union won the Copa del Rey on 3 occasions in their early years. Real Union, joined by the growing V Sports global network of clubs alongside the number 1 team in Japan, Vissel Kobe, who have just won the league, ZFC and Vitoria Sport. So yeah, absolutely brilliant. Absolutely love it. And then we've got some pictures here. Look at how happy they all look. It's a nice stadium, isn't it? That I really like that stadium.
Very nice, yeah.
And yeah, just brilliant stuff. So what are your thoughts on that before we get into predicted lineup?
I think it's a yet another very, very shrewd and clever move by the owners, isn't it? You know, we've seen this expansion of the V Sports group through other countries and other teams, and to link up with other parts of the world and to allow our youth players to go over and experience, different ways of playing, different nationalities, different cultures. I think it's a great thing to do, different coaching techniques. So, we've already seen us add 2 or 3, teams to this, but this is a really strategic link up, isn't it? Because of because of Unai Emery and his history with this club, and I think it just ties us that little bit closer, doesn't it? It gives Unai that extra reason. He doesn't need any reasons already, but it gives him that extra reason to love the club. The owners have obviously spoken very in depth with him about the club. They probably was looking at a Spanish club to get their teeth into as well. And, it makes sense that they've linked up with Unai's club because he's got a direct link with them. And it should be a real close, tight-knit, combination of the two clubs going forward. So I think it's really, really good. I think Unai Emery's here for a very, very long time. I can't see. I'm struggling to see a reason why you'd want to leave in the far future, let alone the near future. So love it, love the link ups, love what we're doing, love the owners. I think the owners. I know we've given them lots of love over the years, and Unai's taking the headlines at the moment, but take a step back and look what the 2 owners have done since they've arrived. It's nothing short of sensational. And they just continue to grow us all the time, don't they?
Definitely. So we'll try and stick to talking about sort of like Europa Conference League rather than splitting it into the Premier League. But what do you think that result on Sunday will do for the squad long-term Premier League wise? What do you think it's going to bring?
It was a really interesting game on Sunday. We spoke a lot about it in the week, didn't we? About how they were going to set up, how we were going to set up, and if I'm honest, I felt they were going to change the way they played to cope with us. And weirdly, it was the other way around, wasn't it? We changed the way we played to our sort of backup formation and backup way of playing to try and combat them, and it didn't work, did it, in the first half? So I think what it does show is that Emery, when things aren't going right, I could not wait for that halftime whistle on Sunday. And
Same.
I generally, I talked to Simon, who I went with at halftime, and he was panicking. Oh God, this isn't going well, is it? And a few people around me mutterings. Obviously, the goal just for halftime was massive, but even if that hadn't have gone in, I don't know why. I know I'm always confident, but I just felt if we could just get in with just one behind, let Emery get into him. I tweeted. I think I tweeted the substitutions. I said I think this is what needs to happen. That's exactly what happened. Tielemans and Bailey. I just felt if we just raise it anywhere near our normal level, we was well off it first off. We were still easily good enough to get into the game and go on and win it. And that's what happened. So I think what it does is it gives the players even more belief that manager. He's just a really good manager, isn't he? And I'm sure I'd love to have heard what he said at half time. I'm sure he calmed them all down. I'm sure he spoke to them methodically about, right, this hasn't worked, so we're going to do this. We're going to change these two players. I'm sure he explained thoroughly to the two players that came off their reasoning behind that. And then the players went out and executed our normal game plan, and we controlled the game fantastically second half. So whether we are going head early or whether we go behind, there's always a plan, isn't there? And there's no need to panic. There's always a way back into every single game. And if you trust the process, and more importantly, trust the manager, which I firmly believe every single player at Villa does, is trust the manager and what he says and what he does. It generally works 9 times out of 10. Nothing's perfect, obviously. But it's just fantastic, isn't it? I was blown away by the second half. I thought we controlled the game really well, and I was going to say thoroughly deserved the win. Maybe not thoroughly deserved the win, but I think we deserved to get the 3 points by the time the whistle blew at the end of the game.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of chat about Villa's high line, and I think the broader fan, so maybe not a Villa fan, they make observations, don't they? And they make perceived judgments based on not a lot of knowledge. And I think that's what happens in football. And I think there's a few things that come into that. And what I mean by that is the away form. So whenever I'm watching and hearing people talk about Villa, it's home form's brilliant, away form's not very good. And we did a little short video, and it was you actually talking about it. And I put the title is Villa's away form, it's not a problem. And you went on to say, it's not a problem, and it's not, because we weren't at the bottom of the away chart. We were like 12th, but we were, like you said, we were a win away from being, I think we're 4th now, but there's about 7 teams.
We've got 10.
Trying to say, yeah.
Sorry, go on.
So there's about 6 or 4, I don't know how many teams, all on the same amount of points. So it's not a problem. So that perceived judgment is not a problem. Then you go on to people say Villa play with a high line. But then when you actually look at how high our line is, we're like mid-table for how high our line is. And I think the other thing that I'd like to say is the point that we saw on Monday Night Football about that astronomical number of how many times we've caught a team offside with the high line. But I think the phrase that we should be using now is an offside trap. I think that's the phrase we should be using, because it's not a high line, it's an offside trap. And that offside trap is getting teams offside like about 50 times more than the next team that's below us. So I think, though, what I'm trying to say is those little sort of preconceived judgments that teams are making and fans are making of us, when you actually look at it, it's not actually that at all, is it really?
No, it's not. That was a phenomenal statistic when I saw that the other day. It's coaching, isn't it? This is what it is. It's elite level coaching, and it's players that are so well drilled. They know exactly how to catch people offside. And as Arsenal proved donkeys years ago, it's very difficult to play that offside rule, if you like, because you have to, the back four have to be literally in sync the whole time, because if one of them is slightly out of position, you're screwed. And the way that we do it is that they're so well drilled that, yes, it's not high line as in halfway line. It's sort of midway, isn't it? So it's there to catch teams offside. And I think at the start of the season, in pre-season, we got caught out quite a bit, right? And we was all a little bit concerned going to season about our high line. And I think other teams have got this perception that, oh, we'll just get round the back of Villa because they play a high line and we'll just time our runs well. What they don't take into account is how well drilled our back four is and how easily now that back four, when they move out, when the ball's coming, they just move out. They all step up. Ball goes over the top. It happened time and time and time again on Sunday against Spurs. And yes, Spurs did dominate us in the first half, but they got caught time and time and time again offside. And that's not a fluke. You don't get caught off 20 times in a half by fluke. And even though it kept repeatedly happening, they still didn't have an answer for it. They still didn't realise if they needed to, I bigged up, sorry, Luke, I bigged up Postecoglou, and I think he's a great manager. But all he needed to do was say to their players, just take another yard, step back another yard, and then hopefully that will combat that line the way they're playing it. And they didn't do it, and they played the price at the end because they should have been 2 or 3 up, but they wasn't 2 or 3 up because they didn't know how to combat our defensive line.
And the other thing is kind of to do with your point there is that this isn't the striker not timing his run correctly. It's our defense, like it's our line that's good about it. Do you know what I mean? And I think it doesn't matter where that player. I think our line is just that good. How many did Son? He could have had an hat-trick, couldn't he, Son? But it was the offside
Easily,
3 times.
Easily.
So I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I just wanted to talk about the offside trap. I've got to remember to keep saying offside trap now and not high line. But our offside trap is absolutely phenomenal. Right, so let's talk about the game then, Legia Warsaw. And it's really hard to analyse Legia Warsaw, like most teams in our group, because you can watch clips. I've been watching like videos before these 2 episodes that I've done on how they play and the good things that they do, like when they've got the ball and, in the Polish league and when they're attacking and that. But there's just no point because they're not going to have that much freedom. They're not going to have that much time on the ball. They're going to literally be camped in with 6 to 7, 8 players defending to try and catch Villa at a certain given moment to try and catch us on the break, a little bit like what Alkmaar did. So, there's literally no point me now sort of showing you like all of the goals that they've scored, etc., because they're going to be in with like a low defending block. But I'll try and just touch on some things that I think we've got to be careful of. And it's is it Mookie or Musi? Pekar has been their player that's been getting the goals, but I think for this game, we're going to see them change their front line with Gual. Musi's going to play. I think one area that we've got to watch is we've got to watch this pace here. So for those given moments that they may try and catch us on the break, this player in particular is very quick, very nimble, and quite tricky, and he can actually finish. His chances that he gets, he puts away with like real good, clean finishes. Both of these, so the wing backs, Kun and Wozlek, we know that they did damage on us with, passing from one end to the other, from that end to that end. They scored 2 goals from doing that, so we are fully aware of that. But for me, I think it's going to be a similar type of game to Alkmaar. If I had to pick out the 2 who I think are the better footballing sides, I think Alkmaar are a better footballing side to these. But I think these can defend a bit better. And I think they'll be more resolute. And I think, again, if I had to show you how I think the game's going to go, it is literally going to be like this. They are going to sit in there and it's going to look like that for, I think, the majority of the game. And it's down to Villa to break them down and just be careful that these 3 here, we're sort of wary of those players. So what would you, Justin, say you expect the game to go like? And then we'll predict the Villa team.
Yeah, I think they caught us cold in the first game, didn't they? We didn't really know what to expect. I think it was the first group game, wasn't it? And we all sort of maybe got a bit of bravado and you thought, I don't know much about them, so hopefully we can just roll them over. But they did. They caught us cold with that early goal. Then we equalised straight away. I was thinking, okay, we've calmed down a bit now. And then they did it again. I think it was a little bit of naivety from us. I think was it Longlay's first game for us,
Yeah.
and we was a little bit all over the shop in that game, but I still think we created enough chances to win that game that night as well, and that was away from home, and we are a different kettle of fish at home, as we know, and I think we're improving away now as well. So I expect us to be totally dominant with the ball. I expect, like you say, for them to sit really deep and try and soak up the pressure and then try and hit us on the break like they did at their place. And the front three are going to be the ones that we're going to try and do all the damage. I do think the back five, but if we can pen that back five in, so if our fullbacks can get far enough forward and the sort of wide men, whoever we end up picking, can sort of sit in and cause havoc in and around the box, then if we can score an early goal, then they've got to change their way of playing. The longer it goes 0-0, the happier they're going to be and the more resolute they're going to be and the more confidence that will give them. So for me, it's going to go one of two ways. It's going to be a really, really tight game if we don't score early. And it could be like the other couple of the group game where we scored late to win it. Or if we score early and they panic, then I think we could basically take them to the cleaners, because I think if they lose their shape and they start losing sort of everything that had been drilled into them before the game, goes out the window very quickly if you score early, doesn't it? Because all of a sudden then they've got to start maybe having a bit more of a go. So I think we're going to score early. I think the crowd's going to be on top of them, and I think we could end up winning maybe 2 or 3.
Yeah, this is it is a difficult game because unlike the other games, they're coming on the same points as us. So they're coming with 9 points. We've got 9 points. They're coming with something actually to defend. Like, they are a win away. If they beat us, they're through. And that's
I think they'd be over the moon with a point, won't they? They're literally. I think that it's the typical. Let's go and not get beat. That's it. As long as they don't get beat, they're happy on Thursday night, I think, and then take the chances in the last group game.
Yeah. And then for a Villa point of view, if we beat them 2-0, we will top the group, because how it basically works is our goal difference will be superior, but the head-to-heads will be exactly the same. And then the head-to-heads go on the goal difference, and then we top the group. So potentially, if we win 2-0, we've topped the group before we have to play the last game.
Yeah.
And then going into that Zawinski game in December with all of those fixtures, we don't have to play some of the players that we might still have to play in this game. So, yeah, big game. They're coming with something to defend. So I imagine their defending will actually be quite good, because that's what they're going to come to do. But again, they've got a threat. They could probably hit us on the break. But I think we're at home with this winning the group at stake. Go out and do it, and then gives yourself an easier game for that Zawinski game as well. So let's pick the team then, Justin. Let's go for it. And I have no idea what we're going to pick, so we may disagree. We may not. Yeah, so let's go. Goalkeeper situation. And there's a couple of things that I want to touch on before we get into it as well. There's a couple of players that have been playing through the pain barrier. Martinez before the game was a doubt. So does he need resting because he was a doubt for that game? McGinn playing through the pain barrier. Does he need resting? Watkins, can he play Thursday, Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday? These players cannot play all of these games in December. So those are a couple of things that I will say. We don't know where Zaniolo is at with his injury as well. So keeper-wise, ideally, we would want to put Olsen in goal. But it's a big game. And I just don't think we can. I think Martinez has to play. So
yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head, really, with this quandary going into this game, and this forms the basis of how I look at this team for Thursday is that as much as Emery looks game on game, that is 1,000,000% he's got his eyes on the next 2 or 3 league games, 1,000,000%,
Yeah.
because they are so
Mhm.
important to our season. Bournemouth away, obviously not as difficult on paper as the Arsenal and City games next week. I think he's got a real eye on those 2 games next week, how intense they are going to be, how
Yeah.
close
Me
together
too.
the 3 league games are.
Mhm.
3 games in 7 days is a big ask in the Premier League. We're in a pretty good position in the group now. We're at home. I think if we were away, I think he would think about it slightly differently. So, being as we're at home, I think he can afford to maybe leave out 1 or 2 of the players you've just been talking about, because I still think with the home crowd and our form at
Yeah.
home, I I'm not disrespecting LEGIA Warsaw, but I think we can beat them with a weakened team. When I say weakened team, obviously not our first 11 out. So I think you really will tinker a bit with it.
Yeah.
It's a really
But
interesting.
yeah,
It's really interesting to
I
me how he goes.
so I know the comment sections. I know there's going to be a lot of people saying play your best team to start with, and then once the game's going well, take those players off. But the way I look at those type of things is as well, it's not even sometimes the physical amount of work, it's the mental amount of work that goes into those types of games as well. And I think, like we've alluded to as well, they can't play 4 games in they can't.
They, they,
What Ollie Watkins cannot play Thursday, Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday.
well, he
He
certainly
can't
can't
do it.
play. He certainly can't play 4 games like that and be absolutely at the top of his game. And this is what you've got
Yeah,
to. We've got to make sure they're as as fit and as close to their best as they possibly can be in 4 games in 2, over what 11, 12 days. It's almost impossible. It's such a difficult thought. And I get what you're saying about that. Certain people will be saying play your best 11, get
yeah,
2 or 3 up, and then rest them. Take them off after an hour or half time. The problem in my mind with doing that is, and I totally understand the thought process behind that, is if it is a really, really, and the opposition are more likely to be better in the first half because their energy levels are high. It's when you batter them down and you get to the end of the game for 60, 70, 80 minutes when their energy levels are going and they've had to defend for 60, 70, 80 minutes and they're tired, then the mistakes creep in. In my opinion, if they're going to be resolute and they're going to be strong, there's more likely going to be 0-0 at half time. And if it is 0-0 at half time, your first 11's out there, you can't really change it at half time. And if you get to 60, 70 minutes, then you start thinking, right, it's 0-0. What do I do now? Because we've got to win the game, but our first 11's out there. So I would rather go with again, I'm saying it's second 11 and have
yeah.
those players up the sleeve for the last 20 minutes. So if you've got a Bailey, a Watkins, and McGinn, a Louise on the bench, and at 0-0, it's 0-0, 70 minutes, then throw them on. The maximum they're going to play is 20 minutes then, maximum. But if
Mhm.
you start them and it's 0-0 at half time, you've got to put them out again for the second half to try and get that result, haven't you? So it's a really difficult one.
It is a difficult one, so let's get on with it then, and let's try and pick this in. These three, 100% starting for me, I think. Longley,
I
there's
agree.
no reason why Longley doesn't start. Carlos, more minutes, absolutely perfect. Predicament on the left-hand side. Moreno now surely is ready to start a game. You know, he
I
played
agree. Yeah.
60 minutes. He played
Yep.
60 minutes for the under 23s. Moreno is back. I would say right back probably has to be Cash, I think. Would you agree?
Yeah, and this again ties into a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago. Is that in the window we need a like for like for Cash for these kind of reasons. You've got Moreno and Dean that can both play that left back role, and then I totally agree. Moreno comes in for this game now. He's fit. He needs minutes in his legs now, so throw him in, see how he gets on. You've always got Dean on the bench at whatever point in the game. If you just say, he might even say to Moreno, have half a game, at half time, we'll put Luca Dean on, give yourself 45 minutes, go hell for leather, and we'll do 45 minutes each. We haven't got that on the right-hand side. By that, I mean, yes, Konsa can play there, but he's not a right back. On Sunday, very similar. Cash came off because of the yellow card. They were worried about getting sent off, so Konsa had to play there. We haven't got that like for like on the right-hand side. So if we want to play our number one way we play, then Cash is the only player that can play in that role. Konsa can, but he plays it when we switch the other way of playing, doesn't he? So
Yeah.
I think Cash plays, yeah.
Me too. A player that I think, again, is a definite is Kamara. He's unavailable for Sunday. So
he's rested there naturally.
He's got to play today. So play on Thursday. And I also think, now I know we said about players being rested. I also think Luis is going to play. I think Luis is going to start. And then I think Tielemans is going to go in that advanced play position in front of. So he's going to go there. And I also think, where's Mr. Ramsey? I think Ramsey's going to start. Do you think Ramsey can start or not?
Yes, I do, for the same reasons Moreno has done. It all obviously depends on what the manager thinks of his workload. He came off the bench on Sunday and he did run around quite a lot for the minutes he stayed on. He was on the pitch for us. Now, whether that was I think he had about 10, well, by the time the injuries time had gone, he had about 15, 20 minutes, didn't he? So maybe that was a literal, go on, run yourself round all game for the last 20 minutes, and then we'll just assess you Monday. And as long as there's no adverse reactions, again, I think he could play at least 45 minutes. So I would start Ramsey and Moreno. I think it's a perfect game for them two to be back in the first 11. I'm a bit different on Louise. I think Louise is one of our jewels in the crown this season. I know everybody's playing really well. I know it's hard to say that. But for me, it's so difficult. I would probably leave Louise out and have him on the bench. Well, this is the problem. Do you then drop Tielemans in? Or dare I say it, do you bring a Dendoncker in? And I know it's not like for like at all, Louise and Dendoncker.
But I think it's also where Zaniolo's at as well. Because you could put Tielemans there. Say you could put Tielemans there. You could still play Ramsey. You could put Zaniolo on the right. You could do something like that. I think that would possibly work.
I'd even be tempted to put Tielemans in the 6 next to Louise, and then play Zaniolo on the left hand side, and give Ramsey that free role, and say to him, "Go on, play a free role in behind."
Yeah. But I said on the match preview that I did yesterday that I also think there may become a time where someone like Dendoncker in December has to play 25 minutes. There may be a Premier League game in December where we need Dendoncker to come on for, let's say, half an hour, and he's going to need some minutes in them legs to be up to speed. So,
how about I'll throw a curveball at you? I'm not saying this is going to happen by any stretch of the imagination, but just bring that team sheet up again, if you can. Right. How about Louise sits out?
Yeah.
And Tim Iribunum comes in.
Great shout. We don't have a graphic for Tim. Oh, we do. We do. We do.
Yeah,
we
there
do.
We go.
I am organised. Okay, yeah.
So how about Iribunum, who, he's a natural player in that position. He was on. I was just double checking before I said it that he was on the bench on Sunday, so he must be fit.
Yeah.
And then you've still got that, which I liked on Sunday. And this is what I was saying to Simon, my mate, that having Tielemans in the middle of the park as opposed to the 5 at the back gives you that extra bit of support in the middle of the park. Now, Ramsey, Tielemans for me are 2 excellent players to sit in behind Durant, because the key to the game on Thursday, playing against a team that's going to sit back and just defend and
Yeah,
basically park the bus, is that you've got to have players that can open them up. And a
yeah,
Tielemans, Ramsey, and Bailey for me
mm,
is
yeah.
probably as good as we're going to get
Hmm.
with leaving our first 11 players out to rest them, ready for a really tough run of fixtures coming up after that in the league. And you know, like I say, that team would release Luca Dean, Dougie Louise, Watkins, Diaby. Them kind of
Yeah,
players would still be sitting there. Now, if needed, they can come on. I would hope that
yeah,
that team right there is good enough to win the game outright without having to worry too much. I mean, you might find that if we are winning, he will just put a few of them players on because in the last 10, 15 minutes, just to give them a bit of a warm up. You know, you often see that. People are saying, why is he putting McGinn on now? We're 2-0 up with 20 minutes to go. If they don't play, then they often go out after the game and have a warm down, don't they, on the pitch.
yeah.
So, you know, keeping their legs going, you might see them play 5, 10, 15 minutes at the end of the game just to keep them sort of match sharp. But yeah, Timmy Rabunum, possibly.
Yeah, I love it, Justin. I think it's got everything I want. It's got everything I want. Couple of them sitting it out. Strong team. What's not to love there? What's not to love? But one player that I do want to touch on, and I watched pitch side, and I really feel like he's loving and enjoying. I'm going to use the word enjoying his football at the minute at Aston Villa now. He's Tielemans. You know,
Mm,
you were there. I saw
yeah.
him, you know, on that pitch side, giving it, you know, giving it the big one in front of the away fans. And he's just looking like brilliant. Like that no look little slip pass to Watkins was absolutely fantastic. And I think if you go back and have a look at sort of, you know, what his role is here, he's sort of in his three-man midfield. And I think when you think of like a three-man midfield, you think of a midfield that looks a little bit like that, so a little bit of a
Yeah.
triangle. And he's still got to do a bit of that, and he's got to. But this midfield that he's got here gives him a load of license to just
Mm,
do some damage and put those little passes in. And one thing about Tielemans, I think, and I remember watching him for Belgium, is that he really looks after the ball. And
yeah.
I think when you give him the ball, he looks after it. And I think we're starting to see him in this position and in this role now. And in this role that he's had to learn from Unai, because, you know, it's a specialist position. But I just want to give him a shout out because he's quickly becoming at the minute one of my favourite players. Like when I just watch him and I'm like, I really rate you. And again, I think he's only going to get better and better.
Yeah, he's a lovely footballer. And I think what's happened is he's settled. He's actually settled within the squad now. And I think it's very often overlooked by us fans that new players come into clubs, and you just think, oh, he's this kind of player. He'll just pick up where he's left off from his old club. Invariably, you sign a player because they've done well at their previous club. So you just pick them up from a club and you drop him in your team, and you just go, okay, carry on doing what you were doing. It's not as simple as that. He's in a new environment with a load of new players, with a load of new personalities that he doesn't know. And there is always going to be a period of adjustment to going anywhere. And I think you want to feel like as well that you can show your teammates, your new teammates, that you are good enough. You want to show your new fans you are good enough. And because he had a bit of a start to his his time at Villa at the start, he wasn't able to fully show off what he's capable of. But we've all seen now how good he is, and we've all seen the impact he has now, whether starting or whether coming off the bench, and he's a phenomenal footballer. He reminds me of another player that I think played in the 8, was Mark Draper, a centre midfielder who had a great passing range, decent enough engine, pick a pass and could score a goal as well. And I like him in the 8-10 role. I love him playing in that little position because, as
Mhm.
you rightly just
Yeah.
said as well, having that little 2 6s in behind you negates the worry in his head of having to sit back. One of the biggest question marks, I think, towards the end of his Leicester career was that he was forced into playing the sixes, and because they were under the cosh most weeks, week in, week out, a lot of Leicester fans were saying his legs have gone. He doesn't look the player he was 12 months ago, I think he's finished. I think he's no good anymore. I don't think he can play at a high level. And that's been shown to be rubbish. It's because he's got that cover in behind him and he's got quality players all around him. Again, we was talking about the other week, footballing IQ. They've all got very high footballing IQ, and we play in a way that allows them all to express themselves. And that's exactly what he's doing now. And he's a joy to watch. He's got a massive smile on his face. He's creating goals. He's already scored one, hasn't he? And I think that his goals are going to start to come, pretty regularly from now on as well, because he loves a little dink as well. And yeah, he's been a phenomenal pickup for us, a phenomenal pickup for a free transfer.
One final point about him as well is the fact that, I mean, there was that whole rubbish of he's not fit, he doesn't look fit, etc. But the beauty of an Emery system, it's like he's the chess player, is that if you put him where he's meant to be, if you put him where he's meant to be, he doesn't have to actually run that far. And that highlights a great system, because if it's all working in unison, he's in his key position. I think last season, I remember watching them and I thought, it was like they were camped in on the edge of their own box. And then it was like they all had to run a marathon to get to the other end of the pitch to where he can actually do the damage. And, that space between defence and attack is so far. Whereas at Villa now, he's sort of like in his own little zone and in his own little pocket. And that's where he operates. And that's just where he plays. And that's where
it was lovely. Him. Yeah, totally. It was lovely to see on the second half. They were kicking sort of up towards the Villa fans in the second half against Tottenham. And there was a period of about 5 or 10 minutes when there was him, Louise and Kamara. And they were playing with Spurs at the edge of their box. They were literally goading them. They were doing little 1-2, 1-2. Well, 1-2-3s. There was like between the three of them, bang, 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 bang. And Spurs didn't know what to do. They were like, okay, what's happening now? And the movement, the little triangles, and just waiting and waiting and waiting. I'm not for a second saying we're as good as the peak Barcelona team with Iniesta, Xavi, and Messi, but in a way, that's the way they used to play. They used to just ping it around between them all at the edge of the box, and they were all that good that eventually one of the defenders would switch off. Somebody who was also equally as good, like a David Villa or somebody they had up front, would make a really intelligent run, which Watkins did. And one of those three players is that good, they'll just pick him out. It's so easy when you think about it, innit? Keep the ball, wait for the other opposition to make a mistake, and have the quality to find your man who's made an intelligent run, who can finish. Bang. I don't know.
Easy as that. Right, so Lenny now. I mean, this just shows how good Villa are doing, because we just thought, okay, we'll just jump on and do a little 20-minute, 37 minutes later, and I could talk to you about another half hour, but yeah. So there's our predicted line. Let me just get it back on the screen. Justin went with his massive call of Irabunum, which I actually like, and there's our team. Let us know what you think in the comment section down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Why do you disagree? Why do you agree? So yeah, make sure you're hitting a like on this video as well. And just cheers for all of your support, like always. And we'll be back now with the fan cams. So if you do want to come on, just come on and just say your stuff. And then we'll get into Premier League action. Big week. But yeah, up the Villa. Thanks, Justin.
Up the Villa. No.